Congratulations and jubilations. Justice has topped the charts.
Hello and welcome to the show. Colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark. This week, we debate Cliff Richard and data privacy rights. Well, senior business managers have to carry the can, said Sir Cliff Richard after he won his privacy case over the coverage of a police raid on his home. Now, a High Court judge said the BBC had infringed the singer's privacy rights in a serious and sensational way. Sir Cliff Richard was not arrested or even charged for the historical child sex claim and told the media that if heads roll, then maybe it's because it was deserved. Yes, so many editors and journalists must be cowering. And it does raise the bigger question of, was the case right? Did Cliff Richard actually deserve to win his case? Did the media actually have the rights to explore his case in further detail in such sensational fashions? Well, here's a little poem which sort of makes me think, maybe there's some repercussions for the media. If digging the dirt is the media measure, you might unearth a celebrity national treasure. But if it's on grounds of lies and bawdy leisure, you might just plant yourself at Her Majesty's pleasure. So, Clergyman Pete, what do you think? Do you think that the judge was right to award the case in favour of Cliff Richard? Or perhaps, maybe, there's something slightly more sinister that hasn't been discussed?
Yes, I think we see in this case a clear case of breach of privacy. It's one thing to have something exposed to the media, something that you've done that you prefer to have hidden. I mean, the Bible talks about this, Luke 12, chapter 12, verse 2. Nothing is covered up that will not be revealed or hidden that will not be known, and advises you to therefore, be a man of integrity. And it seems then that, as far as we know, Cliff Richard was. And so in drawing to attention the accusation that the police were investigating, and this was revealing something to the public that gave the wrong impression about him, as he wasn't even arrested for the offence. So it's in this case a clear-cut case. I mean, there are more difficult cases, where more nuanced cases. Here, there's no question they should not have done it. The BBC and the police colluding with them were definitely at fault.
Well, I mean, I want to talk about the sinister bit, because we know that Sir Cliff Richard, known to be a great entertainer, singer for many, many decades. But there's one thing that perhaps maybe we've got a particular view on the Mark and Pete show, which is something around the Christian faith. Now, as we all know, that in the 1960s, Cliff Richard, a great pop star of his time, and at his absolute peak, suddenly revealed that he was of a Christian faith. Now, of course, some people thought, well, this was the death of his career. And yet, from that point on, he has been perhaps derided, ridiculed in some cases. And this isn't the only case where the media have had a go at him. Now, maybe there's also a sinister side here about the Christian angle. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, it fits in with a particular narrative that we see played out time and time again in mainstream media, and that is of trying to bring down a well-known Christian, to have them shamed. There's an anti-Christian bias, which we see time and time again. It's easy. It would be easy if we did a survey of all the times Christianity is mentioned. I mean, this hasn't been done across the media, but smaller scale surveys have been done, showing that time and again, the number of times that Christianity is mentioned in a negative way far, far vastly outweighs the times that Christianity is portrayed in a positive way. And as part of that, well-known Christians are targeted.
And why is that, do you think?
Well, I can't see a vast conspiracy. I can't see who would be organising such a thing. But what I can see is a bias endemic in society today against Christians. Why is it? Well, I would point to a certain spiritual dynamic that is always in play, and that is of the devil, or you might say evil spirituality, or chaos, or what's sometimes called spiritual entropy, the tendency to disorder, a natural revulsion against Christianity, which is good and clean and has morals that are right and true. There's a retreat from it, and the Bible verse I quoted earlier from Luke's Gospel is talking about that. It's talking about how if you are evil, you'll try and keep your deeds secret, but you should be prepared for them to come to the light. You know, there's the attack against Christianity because it shines a light on culture, and I think it's becoming worse and worse now because of there's a sort of a memory that maybe Christianity is part of colonialism and we should be ashamed of it. But that's really a colour or a flavour of it. The reason for it is an attempt to cover over sin. I mean, since the sexual revolution of the 60s, which of course ended up being anything but a release into freedom, it ended up with breakdown of the family, women being worse off and subject to violence. Ask anyone involved in the Me Too movement, and also caused the breakdown of the family. And to admit that you do need controls on your sexual behaviour, that the old ways in society based on the Bible were actually the best, it's just too difficult. And there's a societal attempt to squash it, to tear down anything Christian. But this is an extreme example of it. However, you can see smaller examples of it just in the day-to-day treatment in the media of people such as, I don't know, your local vicar, always in the media portrayed as either a laughable figure or if he's not laughable, somehow sinister. But the real sinister behaviour, as you were pointing out, Mark, has been the behaviour of the BBC and the police in this case.
Let's just say from a business angle. So from their point of view, one of their arguments is that journalists need to act in good faith, and that they did, in the sense of that they felt that the media need to have access to information, and it's the public's right to know what's going on. And that is true. They're also in a very, very competitive market, and we've seen that the media landscape has changed dramatically over the last 10 to 20 years. And so the dominance of the BBC in particular is not what it once was. I mean, to get the news or to get even programs today, you can get them elsewhere, whether it's on other social media sites and many other platforms. So in many ways, one of the arguments and the issues here was, did they cross the line? As in, did they actually really take the Cliff Richard case? And this is about the point of privacy again. So remember, he was not found guilty, he was not charged, and yet the journalists pursued Cliff Richard, by having helicopters flown in, police raiding his home in Berkshire. Was that really just to sensationalize the story? Now, interestingly, Cliff Richard actually has support here. Now, the former BBC Trust chairman, Lord Patton, has said that the BBC Corporation, would be crazy to appeal against the ruling against Cliff Richard on the privacy case. Now, Cliff Richard was awarded £210,000 worth of damages. Now, that might seem a lot, but ironically, Cliff Richard himself spent a lot more money defending himself. This is an innocent man, incidentally, who spent millions of his own from his own pocket, just simply to sort of, get himself into some kind of parity here, because he was up against a big media giant. Now, what was interesting is that Lord Patton went on to say that the BBC should swallow hard, say they made a mistake, apologise that they have, as they should do, to Cliff Richard, and move on and not do it again. Essentially, that he believes that the incident showed that BBC journalism was not at its best, and it should now get back to situations where it goes back to ethical journalism and integrity. And I suppose this is the thing here, which is the balance between a public organization, and this is the interesting thing, because you and I are citizens of the United Kingdom, and we are stakeholders in the BBC. It's a state-run operation, and so any monies that, in fact, are paid to Cliff Richard, well, it's coming out of the purse strings of the public, and we have every right to know what's going on. Should there therefore be some repercussions to those people who actually made the decisions to pursue Cliff Richard in this way? Should they be held accountable, as opposed to just an organisation?
Yes. Well, I think that personal accountability is important to make it felt, to make a difference. Yes, I do think that.
So what we're talking about here, just to be specific, is that it's Miss Unsworth, who was I think one of the directors of the BBC, who actually endorsed this whole initiative.
Yes.
There were many other stakeholders, but she was actually one of those who sort of came out and made a statement. Then she said that she is keen that we learned lessons from the way we reported the story, but said the principle at stake is one that affects all media organisations, not just the BBC.
Yes.
So, I guess it's about how you tell the story, really, isn't it? Here, Ms. Unworth. But is it more a case that really they did cross the line, and now the pursuit should be against the individuals?
I think that the individuals should be held accountable. Exactly. Yes. Fran Unsworth, the director of News and Current Affairs, she should be held accountable because of her decisions. And remember that this particular story was nominated by her department, of which she's in charge, so she's accountable for this. She nominated her own story for an award, Scoop of the Year. When it was
brilliant.
Yes, so obviously they're very proud of having done this. That just puts the icing on the cake. Just
it does.
Now,
yes, a rather unsavoury bit of icing.
Not only should that happen, but there needs to be a way of going the other way. Of rehabilitating Sir Cliff Richard into his life. You see, now he himself is quoted as saying, "This has changed his enjoyment of Wimbledon. It sort of ruined it." You see, he used to, because he's a member. He used to be able to go and see any matches he wanted on Court 1 because he could just walk past. But to go there, he has to go past the dressing room of the ball boys. So now he won't go there. He doesn't feel able to go past because he doesn't want to be accused of anything. He says, this is a quote from him, "I've spent my whole life hugging people's grandchildren. Now he feels he can't do it. It's ruined his life Because what? Because they wanted to make a story. Now, I think that your point you made earlier, I think it is part of the motivation that I'd missed to say why particularly this case. I think it's because it is such a competitive market, and this seemed like a great story to them. One that would make them. Yeah. But also, it's like it sets you as a left-wing, anti-Christian, progressive organisation if you can get Cliff Richard or one of these people. It's not only that it was a good story, it get eyeballs, get people reading and watching. It's also a good story in that it sets out their stall. And if you're on that side of the aisle, if you're left wing, what I, as you know, like to call the left wing, silly billy, arty farty, lefty tendy, and I suppose I should add anti-Christian, pro-perversion brigade, those people who seem to have had their own way for so long. There's been a bit of a fight back by the Me Too movement, which I support, or we, Mark and Peter, have supported, of course, when we talked about the Weinstein affair. But in general, they're still in charge. They're the ones who need to be kicked out. Stop going after people who happen to disagree with your political and religious views. For goodness sake, let people have differences of opinion. What is it? If he's a Christian, let him be a Christian. Would you have gone after a Muslim in the same way?
That's a valid point.
The answer is no, as there are grooming, that is to say, rape gangs, who were not treated in that way at all. In fact, they're very much let off, not covered by the BBC. until it's forced down their throat. So I'd just like to just give you just one other example about something that that happened recently. There's a bishop of the Church of England, George Bell. Now, George Bell has had he was a bishop from years ago, but he's had his reputation dragged through the mud when he's not in a position to defend himself. And the reason, well, because same reason that people just love to this mainstream media and this whole sort of low-level collusion, loose collusion of people against Christianity for what are called progressive values, which is why I put in the sexual perversion, because that's sort of part of it, that you pro-sexual perversion. And to show yourself to be part of that, these people in the media and the political elites are all living in their own little bubble. They cannot see how anyone can disagree with them. Now, George Bell died back in 1958. That's why I said he's in no position to defend himself. But he has now been accused of sexual impropriety with minors, none of which have been proved. And the people who accused him, there were problems with their testimony, and yet the media covered it. Boy, did they cover it! So I think that's another example, just to back up my claim that Cliff Richard is just one example of a particular bias, not just in the BBC, although they should be held culpable for where they've done this, but in the whole of this nexus of left-wing, silly-billy, lefty, trendy, pro-sexual perversion brigade, who seem to be running the show at the moment. It's time we fall back. I don't mean physically fight back. I mean fight back as Cliff Richard did. And the way that we can support him and thank him for, spending his hard-earned cash in fighting back like this, instead of just saying, sorry, and disappearing, fighting back, which must have been so hard. It's been years, as well as been a lot of money, of him being dragged through the mud and, people and the BBC wanting awards for doing it. He is to now buy his records. If you've got
play his records,
absolutely. We on this podcast invite him on the show. Come and speak to us. Get him. Not only say no, I'm not going to say a bad word against him. Say good words for him. I think we owe it to Cliff Richard that he put his head above the parapet and fought back against this evil. And I think it is. I think it's not too much to say evil. You see. Yeah. When you have cases like this, it takes away from real cases of sexual abuse that we do want to be investigated to their fullest.
Well, indeed. And in fact, ironically, there's a very well-known Cliff Richard song called Why Should the Devil Have All the Good Music?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
I invite all of our listeners to listen to it, but it is
Go and buy it.
But let's come to a conclusion here. So here's a sort of a Mark and Pete point here. So the judge found that it was not merely the BBC's use of the helicopter pictures which breached Sir Cliff's right to privacy. The simple naming of Sir Cliff as a suspect in the police investigation amounted to a breach of his privacy. So here's a little thought for those, perhaps as Clergyman Pete so eloquently pointed out, about those who point the finger of blame. And I'll leave you with this little thought. If you're one of those who point the finger of blame and then proceed to make an outrageous claim against those who cannot defend their good name, whether a harmless citizen or one of celebrity fame, with sole intent to throw them off their game or to simply put the innocent in the frame, perhaps it's you that the law should name and shame. Yes. So why not log on to our podcast list and markandpete.com and listen to this and more subjects around this wonderful story. And we know that this story is going to run and run. I'm sure it will. So join us again next time for more data privacy issues and colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.
Yes, do right.